There are only 4 situations where involuntary interactions occur: rapists, murderers, thieves, and the government. So what does it tell you about the government that it's in the category with those other 3 things?
Okay. Earlier today, we did a thing you might have heard about called Change My Mind, except here at Anarchapulco, it was kind of hard to find people that wanted to change our mind on the fact that taxation is theft. So I went undercover as Statist Patrick to allow people to test their arguments and to sharpen their wit on me.
The arbiter of truth and all that is holy.
I'm Patrick. Thanks for sitting down with me today. What's your name?
I'm Parker. Nice to meet you.
Parker, nice to meet you. So, what we're doing here today is there's a lot of people here that disagree with the position that taxation is not theft. And so, for the purposes of having good, rational conversation, I'm sitting down, I'm taking that position, taxation is not theft, and I'm asking people to try and rationalize that position, and maybe we get a good discussion where we could both learn something out of it. So, thanks for sitting down with me today.
Thank you. You're welcome.
Yeah, so that's my position. Taxation is not theft. Change my mind.
Taxation is theft because if you don't comply, the same thing happens as what happens when you don't comply with a robber on the street. Violence is committed against you.
But the robber doesn't ask your permission or allow you to have a say in the robbery, or, you know, thieves don't ask for your consent or...
Neither does the government.
Oh, sure it does.
I got locked in a cage for possession of cannabis. Nobody asked my permission to do that to me.
Were you not aware of the rules?
Well, if a law is unjust, then people are supposed to break it until it changes. That's how this country was founded, right?
I'm not sure what the founding of the country has to do with smoking marijuana when it's illegal. Were you aware that it was illegal?
Yeah.
And were you aware of the consequences?
Were the founding fathers aware that it was illegal to dump the tea in the harbor when they did that?
I'm sure they were.
There you go.
And if there were enough police around, I'm sure they would have been arrested, right?
Yeah, that's fucked up. That's the problem.
What's the problem?
That a group of armed thugs would come and commit violence against somebody that didn't commit violence against anyone at all.
So you're calling law enforcement armed thugs?
That's correct.
And you think that's a good idea?
That's the truth.
Why is that the truth?
They are armed and they act in the capacity of thugs.
Okay, so I guess I don't understand your rebuttal to my position that taxation is not theft.
It is theft because it's done under the threat of violence.
Many things are
involuntary interaction.
A lot of times force can be used in situations where...
There are only 4 situations where involuntary interactions occur: rapists, murderers, thieves, and the government. So what does it tell you about the government that it's in the category with those other 3 things?
Okay, you're begging the question. You put the government in a category and then called it bad. So I disagree that the government's in that category.
I didn't say the government's bad. I just said they're in the same category as those other 3 people.
Well, I disagree it's in the same category.
Well, those are the only people that will do involuntary interactions with you.
The government is not in an involuntary interaction with you.
So if a cop puts handcuffs on you, you want that? Is that against your will?
You chose to live in an area with the rules such that they are.
So you would willingly let handcuffs be put on you when you know that you haven't done anything wrong. What does that make you?
If you chose to live in an area and you're aware of the rules and you're aware of the consequences, then why would you be surprised when you suffer the consequences? And why would you call it involuntary? You could live anywhere. You could live here in Mexico where the taxes are almost zero. Why don't you live here? Are you just like sadistic? You want to go to the U.S., break the law, and then complain about getting handcuffed?
So by that logic, government can invade a country and go live in their area and then say, oh, well, if you don't want to follow our laws, then you can't live in this area. Is that right?
Government can invade an area, and I don't understand how that applies.
Well, basically, if government can move to any area they want and say, well, we're making the rules here. If you don't like it, then you can leave. That's what you're saying is legitimate.
No, I'm saying, like, the government derives its just powers from the consent of the people living there, of the governed. So the government only exists in the area where...
Well, I'm not sure if government really does derive its powers in a just method that way. You might be operating on...
Well, make the case.
Well, what's democracy then? 2 wolves in a sheep voting on what's for dinner? So if 51% vote that they want to eat the other 49%, that's legal, right? So by your definition of morality, that would fly?
If you choose to live in the area where that's the process that's decided, then it's not immoral.
So basically, you're okay with eating people as long as they live in your area.
What?
That's what he said.
How does that follow? How does that follow?
Isn't that what he said?
I'm okay with eating people then.
That's correct.
No, I'm okay with abiding by the rules I agreed
You're
to.
okay with a system that would allow people to be eaten if they vote that way.
If they vote that way, them being eaten would be consensual. No harm, no foul.
What kind of system was it that allowed slavery?
Did you hear what I just said?
Say it again.
You got to listen to what I say if I'm listening to what you say, okay?
Yeah.
So I said if they voted to be eaten and get eaten, no harm, no foul. They consented. That's fine. If you live in an area and you vote to have tax laws and you don't pay your taxes and you suffer the consequences that you chose to live under and that you had the legal voting agency to have changed, you can't then complain that that's theft.
The problem is the 49% did not, in fact, vote to be eaten. They voted against that. Only the 51% voted to eat them.
So why did they live there then? Why did they stay living there? Why didn't they come to Mexico where they won't get eaten?
So you're operating under the assumption then that if a majority of people decide they want to eat the minority, that's okay so long as the minority chooses to remain living there. So basically what you're saying is that what I just said.
Yes, because if they choose to remain living there, they, with full foreknowledge, know that they could be eaten, and that's consent. If you consent to be eaten, like if I consent to be cannibalized, there's no immorality there. Do you agree that I should have the right to commit suicide?
Yeah, I just don't think people are...
So you don't want people to commit suicide if they want to?
I mean, I just said that it's your right to do that.
All right.
I don't
So
think
it's my right
to eat you, though, because...
So it's my right to choose to be cannibalized or to choose to be eaten. Are you saying I don't have the right to control this property and choose to be eaten if I want to be eaten?
To eat other people because it's an act of aggression, and that's what people who support democracy fail to understand.
It's not an act of aggression if I want it, if I consent to
The
it.
majority decides to do something doesn't make it okay.
If you choose to continue living in an area that makes those rules,
So all of the Jews should have moved out of Germany, and it's their fault for not moving. Gotcha.
make the case.
Well, no,
Was there a law that was passed that?
well, there was in fact a law that was passed, which is why government is the.
What was the law that was passed?
Well, whenever Hitler.
I'm pretty sure that shit wasn't legal.
Really? How sure are you?
Pretty sure.
The Holocaust was illegal?
Pretty fucking sure.
Well, you're pretty fucking wrong. The entire thing was legal. It was all done by the government. It was all done by democracy.
The government does illegal stuff all the time.
Well, then...
That doesn't make it right.
Right. Taxation is just one of them. Taxation is theft.
Taxation's passed in laws and you can affect them.
All right, but let's go back to your central point, though, because if your central point is correct, then those Jews in Germany were wrong for not moving, and Hitler was in the right. Is that your position?
If it was passed in law, then they should have got the hell out of there.
All right, well, you guys heard the man. It's the Jews' fault for not leaving Germany.
You're strawmanning
There
me.
you go. How am I strumming? That's what you just said.
If they passed it into law,
It was passed into law. It was. Not by the Jews. Probably by the other 51%, maybe, but
what was passed into law? I'm skeptical that there was a law.
the legal right to kidnap Jews, commit aggression against them, put them in concentration camps, all that stuff was all done in the name of democracy by government, by the majority, if you believe that vote was legitimate.
I'm skeptical of the law claim. Can you make your case any other way without referring to Nazis and Jews?
In control of the government or not?
Can we have an argument outside of the Jews dying here?
Military.
I'm trying to have a more rational discussion here without appealing to things that happened that you can't prove. You can't tell me the law that said we get to gas Jews.
All right.
I'm pretty sure if I Googled right now, I would not find a law that says Hitler gets to gas Jews.
Well, you would, because if you truly believe that what Hitler was doing was illegal, then I'm sorry, but you're just plain wrong. I don't know how else to tell you that. And if you just do a few minutes of research into what the Holocaust was, you'll see that it was entirely done by government and nothing else.
So why didn't they leave then?
Well, some did, and some were just killed. But I don't really think that any reasonable person can say that the Jews were at fault for not leaving.
Well, I don't have to say that because that's not the topic of our discussion.
Well,
the discussion is taxation is not theft, and we've barely talked about taxation. Would you like to get back on that topic?
Yeah, we can get back on that topic.
All right, please do.
Okay, well, taxation is theft because it requires violence.
Consensual violence.
It's not consensual.
It is if you choose to live here.
I was born here.
Are you aware of do you own property?
No, but still, so you do think, and you're willing to openly state that you think the Jews were the problem in the Holocaust.
I'm done talking about Jews. I'm talking about taxation. We can debate Jews another time.
All right, well, I'm trying to attack your other central point because it's relevant to the next point you're trying to make. But taxation is theft because it requires violence, yeah.
But it's consensual violence because not only do you choose to live here.
No, because the majority can't decide morality for the minority. That's why I was trying to get back to the Holocaust thing.
It's not morality, it's legality.
Well, then it's theft. It's legal theft.
How? You have to make the case. You can't just state the conclusion over and over.
Theft that happens to be legal. That happens.
You have to tell me how. You can't just say that.
Civil asset forfeiture. The government can just steal your stuff.
You're just stating conclusions, not making arguments.
I'm stating that the government can steal from you by accusing your property of...
I disagree that it's theft. You have to show me how it's theft. You can't just call it theft over and over.
It's theft because it requires violence on those who don't consent.
There are none that don't consent.
I don't consent.
You consent by living in America.
No, I don't.
Yes, you do.
So...
You got to make an argument.
Well, how about this? You owe me 20% of your income, and if you don't consent, then you got to move somewhere else.
If I moved on to property or an area that you had governance of, rightful just authority over, then I would need to abide by the rules.
On the sidewalk outside your house and declare that I now govern your property and demand 20% of your income, and you don't move, then you have to give me that, right?
Is your argument that that's how all property was incorporated into governments? Because that's not true.
No, my argument is that you can't just arbitrarily decide that people owe you money and then accuse them of being criminal if they don't comply.
Good thing that's not how it works then.
That's exactly how it works.
No, it's not. Private property was voluntarily incorporated by the property owners back in the day. Into towns that then incorporated into cities.
So
that was consensual private property incorporating themselves into government.
How is that contradicting my point?
It was consensual.
Well, acquiring private property is consensual, yeah, but taxing...
Incorporating. The private property owners, the sovereign citizens that own their property, chose to incorporate themselves into towns to get the shared benefits of the shared resources and services of their local towns, consensually.
Yeah.
That also required consenting to the taxes of that area.
I can maybe see how requiring or having like a sales tax on goods is one thing, but that's different from
your opinion of what you can see doesn't matter. That's what happened. They chose to voluntarily incorporate their property into towns.
All right, well, income tax is theft. It's not even legal. The IRS is not even a legal court.
You just changed subjects and stated another conclusion. You have to make arguments here.
Well, my argument is that it requires violence, so that's why it's illegitimate.
A lot of things require violence that are perfectly... Self-defense is violence. Isn't that legitimate? So simply saying that it requires violence doesn't make it illegitimate.
No, the voluntarist point of view is that the only time that it's appropriate to use violence is in self-defense when someone attacks you first.
I don't care about the voluntarist point of view. I want to hear the argument that you're making.
That is my argument. I'm saying that it's illegitimate for the government to force me to pay for something that I don't want to pay for.
And I was giving you an example that not all violence is bad, like self-defense violence. And in the case, or contract enforcement violence. So if we make an agreement that we both consent to, and part of the consent of the rules that we agree to includes penalty violence against the person that violates the contract, that violence isn't immoral, right?
Yep.
That's a government.
It's just a straw man for you to say that everybody agreed to it because they don't, and it's also incorrect to say that by living here you agree to that because that means that Jews also agreed to their own demise.
Can you make that argument instead of just telling me that conclusion? You got to tell me how those things are the case.
How what is the case?
The points that you just made were conclusions, not arguments. You have to tell me why and how those things are the case, and not just that they are.
Oh, okay. Because it would be because if you're trying to squat in the same land as somebody and say that, oh, well, you have to move, then you are the aggressor. The person is not the aggressor for just being there. You're the aggressor for coming in and saying, I'm demanding that you go away.
Who got there first? Was the government in existence before you were born? So who should have the say?
Yeah, well, who existed first, people or government?
That doesn't matter. Were you a person before the government was a thing?
No.
So the government was there first. So it's you getting on their shit, trying to complain about the rules. They were there first.
All right. Well, yeah.
We have 5 minutes left.
Okay.
So I can step out of character if you want to. If you have any thoughts or comments or final thoughts on this talk.
No.
I really enjoyed it.
Thanks.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Yeah. I thought that was an interesting one. Thanks for pushing back.
Yeah.
Harder than most people.
Hell yeah.
I would, if I had any feedback for you, and I want feedback for myself as well. I would try and stop stating conclusions, because the conclusions are what people already disagree with, right? We're trying to red pill people. So if we just keep saying like taxation is theft, and they're like, no, taxation is not theft. Well, it's theft. Well, it's not theft. Well, it's theft. It's like we're not getting anywhere. We got to like slow down and like explain. Can we agree on a definition of theft? Then you got them. Then you got them stuck.
Okay.
You got their foot caught in the trap, right? And then you can work around that trap, like spiraling in to get them to agree with you. That kind of thing. Anyway, do you have any feedback for me?
No, I think you did pretty good.
Okay. I'm a pretty evil bad guy. Thank you. Thank you very much. That was great. Good job. Well done.
Yes, consider donating to the Patreon, because otherwise we won't have any food to eat.